Welcome everybody to the first ever Cnfldl Pigskin review show. This is the bi-weekly show where we discuss everything having to do with the Cnfldl over the past couple of weeks. But without further ado, let's get right into it and talk about the AFC East. The top teams in the AFC East by far are the Buffalo Bills and New York Jets at this point. The Miami Dolphins are doing pretty good as well, but I just wanted to focus on the Bills and the Jets. The Bills, owned by X, is 4-1. He is really tearing it up right now with Jamal Charles. Jamal Charles has 1,007 yards and 12 touchdowns in 5 games. He is on pace possibly to break some records. And that Jamal Charles, he's definitely kicking ass, as you'll see later on when we go over the players of the week. As for the Jets, it's really all been about Mike Vick. The team, the team is doing good. They're 4-1, run by King Mizark. But there's nobody really standing out more than Mike Vick, as probably was to be expected. Mike Vick is a dynamic player, and you would think that he would really be the driving force for that team, and he is. He has 9 touchdown passes so far in the season, 1,061 yards. But the problem with this Jets team is their running game. They really don't have one. Darren Sproles is their starting running back, and he really is not getting out of the gate. It's been so bad for the Jets running game that Mike Vick is actually leading the team in rushing with 268 yards and 3 touchdowns. Next up, we have the AFC North. Right now, the division leader in the AFC North is the Pittsburgh Steelers. They are 4-1 with the Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals both at 3-1. So this is a really tight division. The Browns are in last place right now at 1-3. With regards to the Steelers, that is my team, they've given up the second least amount of rushing yards this season so far, led by David Harris at middle linebacker, who's just a beast and will tackle anybody who comes his way. On the offensive side, it's been kind of interesting. Matt Schaub, he started off well, but he struggled his past couple of games, and now he has 9 interceptions. And it's quite the opposite then for Chris Johnson, who has 535 yards rushing so far and 7 touchdowns. But he did get a lot of his yards this week versus the Titans, which we have a highlight. So here, take a look at this highlight of Chris Johnson getting an 83-yard touchdown versus the Tennessee Titans. Yeah! Next, we're going to move on to the AFC South. The AFC South is led by the Houston Texans. Houston Texans owner CGS, a.k.a. Come Get Some, who was the Cnfldl Season 1 champion. His quarterback this year is Eli Manning, who so far has been, all right. But, still the Texans are doing very well. They're a very balanced team on offense and defense. They are top 10 in both, and they've definitely been more of a running team, which maybe isn't the style that you expected out of the Houston Texans, but they have Felix Jones so far, who has 513 yards and 6 touchdowns. Vontae Davis also is doing a great job on that defense with 4 interceptions. On to the AFC West. The AFC West right now is led by Michael at 3-1. He is the owner of the Chiefs. And this is despite the fact that he has given up more points than he has scored. Part of that is his Week 1 game versus the Bills, where they definitely had a lot of trouble stopping the run and Jamal Charles. But since then, they've done just nicely, winning 3 games in a row. And this is despite having the 3rd worst defense in the league, which is really surprising, and Peyton Manning struggling with more interceptions than touchdowns. But still, they've been able to get their wins, and at the end of the day, that's what's important. Part of the reason is the running of Mark Ingram. 7.8 yards per carry. and any running back that's going to get 7.8 yards per carry, your team is probably going to be doing pretty good, and that's why the Chiefs are 3-1. On to the NFC East. The NFC East leaders right now are the Philadelphia Eagles, and it's been kind of a mixed review for this Eagles team so far. You wouldn't think a team that is leading the league in offense with 41.2 points per game would be 3-2, but that's just been the case. I mean, part of it is the Eagles' schedule has been pretty tough. Their losses came to the Bills and the Falcons, who are both top quality teams in the Cnfldl. Their other problem with the Eagles at this point is they're giving up 30 points per game. And when you're scoring 41 points per game, you can't be giving up 30 points per game. That's part of the reason why they're 3-2 also. They have a rookie starter out there in Colin Kaepernick, who is actually doing pretty decent so far. 67.8% completion percentage, 14 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. Part of that is the Eagles' draft strategy going into the draft was don't take a quarterback and then take about 5 of them. And that's pretty much what happened there. Michael Turner is leading in rushing with 695 yards and 7 touchdowns. So Michael Turner, it looks like his burners are back with Michael Turner, and he's doing an amazing job for the Eagles. One thing that does help Colin Kaepernick have that good of a completion percentage would probably be his wide receivers. His wide receivers are Andre Johnson, Steve Smith, and Miles Austin. And when you have those three, you're in pretty good shape. And next on to the NFC North, where you got 2 teams, the Lions and the Packers, leading the division. The Lions at 4-1, the Packers at 3-1. I wanted to focus on the Packers here because their defense has been unreal so far. In 4 games, they are giving up 5.3 points per game. They've given up 36 points in 4 games, and that is insane. I don't think I've ever seen a defense that good before, led by Matt Roth with 4 sacks and Brandon Merriweather with 11 tackles. This team, you can't score on this team. I mean, they are giving up less than a touchdown a game. How do you compete against that? And he's 3-1. That's the funny part about it, because he did lose a game where he actually did give up some points, and still he's at 5.3. That's Coach Grind, by the way, who is the owner and coach of the Green Bay Packers. And Coach Grind has always been known to be a defensive mastermind, and he's doing it again with the Green Bay Packers. And it's kind of interesting because he didn't build his team like you would think a Coach Grind would, with great defensive players all over the place. But, you know, sometimes when you've got it, and Coach Grind has it. Speaking of great defenses, we'll stick with that theme as we go to the NFC South and talk about the Atlanta Falcons. This is run by Killed My GPA, and he may not have killed your GPA, but it feels like he's killing the GPA of his owners because I don't really know if that makes sense, but that's all right. I don't think it does make sense. He's kicking ass. Let's just put it this way. He is the number 2 defense in the league. He is giving up 15.3 points per game, and he's first in yards given up per game with only 210 yards per game. So you show up against the Atlanta Falcons, don't worry about scoring points. You're gonna have to figure out another way to win this game, because the Falcons are not giving up a lot of points at all. They are led in their sack department by Chris Long, which is nice to see. Nate Allen is leading in interceptions with 3 interceptions, and Ernie Sims is by far the master of this defense with 10 tackles and 2 sacks. The Atlanta Falcons are going to be very difficult to beat. We're going to finally talk about the NFC West. The NFC West, the Cardinals, you know, I didn't even mention this, but, you know, the Cardinals and the Falcons are the only 2 undefeated teams left. The Cardinals are 5-0. This is run by Big D, and Big D is tearing it up with the sacks. That team, the Cardinals team, has 24 sacks already on the season. And this team is 5-0. I think their defense, which, I mean, it's not as stellar as the past 2 defense we've spoken about, but it's still getting it done. And this is all, you know, they're doing this despite Matt Ryan looking average. He only has 56% passing, 7 touchdowns. but you got LaShawn McCoy, who is tearing it up right now. 609 yards and 13 touchdowns on the season. 13 touchdowns is sick at this point in 5 games. So if you're playing the Cardinals, you know you better stop LaShawn McCoy, or else you don't have a chance of winning that game. You might as well put down your controller and walk away, because LaShawn McCoy right now is just dominating defenses. We actually have a highlight here, not of LaShawn McCoy, but of Matt Ryan. This is in the Cardinals game versus the Giants. Torrey Smith scores a 90-yard touchdown. Check it out. Okay, and that does it for our recap of the divisions. Next, I wanted to go over the players of the week for the past few weeks. In week 1, we had Jamal Charles, which had, this has been, actually this has been a theme so far. We've had some running backs having some incredible games. Week 1, Jamal Charles, 316 yards, 5 touchdowns, plus 1 receiving touchdown versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Just a brilliant performance. On defense, Adrian Wilson of the Dallas Cowboys, 8 tackles, 2 interceptions, 1 forced fumble versus King Mizark and the New York Giants. Unfortunately, that was a loss for them, but Adrian Wilson had a good game. Week 2, we just spoke about him. LaShawn McCoy of the Arizona Cardinals, 311 yards, 6 touchdowns. This was versus the J-Doggy and the Washington Redskins. Incredible game. And on defense, Eric Berry of the Indianapolis Colts, run by Spricky. He had 4 tackles, 5 interceptions versus the Cleveland Browns. Week 3, on offense of the Miami Dolphins versus Sir Byron the Flower, Mike Goodson had 285 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 receiving touchdown, again versus the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns like giving up yards to players of the week. On defense, Carlos Dunlap, get ready for this, for the Arizona Cardinals versus the Seattle Seahawks and Iron Kobe. He had 5 tackles, 5 sacks, 1 forced fumble. That is just a beastly performance. Nobody could stop Carlos Dunlap that day. I don't know where the offensive line was, but they just didn't show up. Week 4. The Tennessee Titans, which at this point was being run by Grem Squad while Mr. Insane Dragon is away. Reggie Bush, 179 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 receiving touchdown versus the Cleveland Browns. And on D, Dante Whitner of the Minnesota Vikings, run by Purple Pimp, 7 tackles, 1 sack, 1 interception, 2 forced fumbles versus Kansas City and Michael. Last thing I want to talk about is the upcoming games to watch for in the upcoming weeks 5 through 7. Week 5, Packers versus Falcons. Great defensive battle. Number 1, number 2 defense in the league. It's going to be real exciting to see who comes out with this win. Week 6, Jets versus Dolphins. 2 top teams in the AFC East. Jets, Dolphins, always great matchups in real life. I'm sure it'll be a great matchup here in Cnfldl. Week 7, Steelers versus Cardinals. This is an old rivalry from last year's CNFL. Me and Big D looking forward to this one in Week 7. Week 8, Eagles versus Cowboys. Top division teams in the NFC East. Eagles, Cowboys, Omar versus Wong should be a good one. And Week 9, Jets versus Bills, King Mizark versus X. These 2 teams, arguably the top 2 teams in the AFC, face off for the first time this season. Well, that's all we got for the show. I appreciate everybody watching. We'll come back in 2 weeks and do this all over again. Cnfldl Pigskin Review. See ya, guys.